Ethan Miller never imagined he'd find himself standing at the edge of a cracked asphalt lot, staring at a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere. 3 years ago, he'd been living in a cramped apartment with his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, just scrapping by on odd jobs after his wife's sudden passing. He'd promised himself he'd never let Lily feel alone, but he'd never imagined what real loneliness looked like until he met Emma. Emma Green was the town's so-called ghost. She'd grown up here, but when her parents died in a car crash, the gossip turned vicious. People said she was cursed, bad luck, not worth the trouble. So she stayed out of sight, raising her own son, Danny, alone in a tiny trailer behind her late uncle's rotting gas station. It was a frigid January when Ethan's truck broke down just outside town. Lily had been sick, burning up with fever, and Ethan was frantic. The local motel wouldn't take them without a hefty deposit of money he didn't have. That's when Emma, a stranger, stepped out of the shadows and offered them her spare room. No judgment, no questions, just a warm bed and a mug of canned soup. They were strangers, but that night, Ethan knew kindness could be the biggest shelter in the world. Over the next few months, Ethan fixed Emma's leaky roof, mowed the weeds around the gas station, and slowly fell for her quiet strength. He saw the way she read bedtime stories to Lily when he was too exhausted to keep his eyes open, the way she braided Lily's hair while Danny giggled at cartoons. He'd spent years believing broken people couldn't build something holy, but with Emma, that belief changed. So he did the most reckless thing he'd ever done. He asked Emma to marry him. 2 single parents, 2 kids, and a gas station nobody wanted what could possibly go right. Their first weeks as a family were hard. Locals sneered when they walked into the diner. The bank sent letters threatening foreclosure on the gas station. The roof leaked worse than ever. Sometimes Ethan wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Then, one spring morning, Lily found Ida an old key taped onto the cash register. She'd been playing shopkeeper when she pressed a loose floorboard and it popped up like a secret door. Beneath it was a rusted metal box, locked tight. Ethan nearly laughed at the idea that their junk pile might hide buried treasure, but the key fit. Inside the box was a deed, brittle and yellowed, stamped with a name Ethan didn't recognize. Horace Green, Emma's uncle. Alongside the deed were oil survey map citizens of Emma marked with circles and notes in tiny, spidery handwriting. Horace had once sold drilling rights on the land, but no one ever bothered to follow up. Ethan spent 2 sleepless nights digging through the town's archives, old contracts, and dusty legal files at the county office. Then he made a phone call to an oil company listed on the maps. 3 weeks later, men in shiny boots and pressed suits stood on their lot, offering a deal that made Ethan's knees buckle. The land was sitting on an untapped reserve worth nearly $200 million. But the real treasure wasn't the money, it was the choice they now had. Emma could finally stand up in that town that had called her worthless and say she was worth something after all. Ethan could give Lily the childhood she deserved, one where she'd never feel the sting of eviction notices or skipped meals again. And Daddy, he'd never again have to hear his mom apologize for not having enough. On the night they signed the deal, Emma stood at the edge of their crumbling lot, staring at the gas station's flickering neon sign. Ethan wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You know," he said, "you didn't have to take us in that night." Emma smiled softly, her eyes shining under the neon glow. "And you didn't have to stay." In that moment, they realized the real secret wasn't the oil under their feet. It was the kindness that bound them together when they had nothing. It was the choice to see a broken family as something worth building, even when the world turned its back. They rebuilt the gas station, and not because they needed the money anymore, but because they wanted it to be a place where no one felt they had nowhere to go. A place where a single dad, an outcast mom, and 2 kids could show the world that sometimes, the best things grow from the cracks. And when the sign flickered to life again, a Miller Green stop pay and fuel, warm coffee, free smileless people started to come, some for gas, some for Emma's famous peach pie, but most because they heard the story of a family who turned nothing into everything, simply by being kind. In the end, they didn't just inherit a gas station. They inherited a second chance, proof that no matter how lost you feel, one act of kindness can change everything.